is an audio message preached by Reverend Pastor at Trinity in Montpelier, Vermont, online at Pastor. Thanks for listening.
One of the people who and the rules to extend the length that the annual conference would meet. So we don't have this morning, but I would need to do so. If you will permit me to abbreviate some thoughts about that folks had asked when some folks would like to hear. I can't pick you up during my sermon. Mom needs her hands. I can't. It's so true. Annual conference session asked was that their congregations, the ministry, of how we felt with God, with the ministry, our understanding of what it. Heard that story at least once or twice. So I believe, and I hope that you'll hear a few months and years of how he felt called, how he knew that God was, and to which God called him. Due respect, half the story. I've also heard over the past 6 of how God has called. We believe in the ministry of all Methodist Church and many churches, the Christian body, and pastor's perspective of that is important. Are as important, if not mine. With me, your stories of how to the Christian faith, of how you felt called, that you share, that you will share key as well, and consider. I hope you'll share your store. I hope you'll lead community lunch time and gifts there. And how you bring growth, or you sit on a committee, or you go to annual in the district. I hope your ministry and your work outside, your nonprofit work, your ways in which your job, people in the world, on life is part of how God has. Those stories are powerful, and we sell ourselves short. We sell the call if we refuse to tell. We privilege the stories. I want folks to share with me what you to know. Sermons about how do we know us to do individually, calling us to do as a church. To share a few how we know that. The example that I would give are the comparison called to something by God, of falling in love. It's a little bit like when we say the experience of falling, not one experience. For different people in different ways at different times. Falling in love is like, really? All at once in a moment, love, it sometimes happens over where you walk and never notice until it almost and again and over and over. And it involves our of being swept away than ourselves. The ministry to any ministry is often surprising. To be called to do something. Times it happens tell stories about how it happens on these stories. Like my call story that the voice of God or some moment in our lives. Swept away, it's like falling. And sometimes we lift up, we privilege this fall in love at first sight story. And it's so romantic and passionate. I really heard the voice of God call. And that's an amazing way. But more than half the ordained people I know who ministry don't have a story like. And again, we do if we fall is any less called or a falling in love aids over 5 less powerful. The story of ministry or the story of being that we didn't notice at first as a person we passed by, a small whisper. It started as and it wasn't something that for many of us the story of being is a tremendous fact. That's the first thing I'd say about a call when God is it's something you would on your own. On your own, then that might be a calling. But what God might be trying to tell me something I don't want to do, self-doing. And I really heard God as a preacher. I never would have act given where it wasn't even a possibility. Where women were not clergy. It never occurred to me into surprise. It's anticipate time and to God. One of their biggest objections is, but I want me to what? Calling you to share the story. This person in the world who wants to do that, God calling you to. Another is that you can't get rid of that. Sometimes we get ideas about doing something and then they go away. Called and you can't, you say yes, or you can't get an urgency of in a direction. It's probably you're being called to something. And so let's say that you've experienced, might be in a flash and I'm do this. And then it doesn't might be, I have always my life, because that's another part of my life. I've always seen that I've been interested in that I people in this way. And I finally be a calling and now it won't. The next question is that. How do we know it and how? Callings you can just live into. Feel moved in the moment to make up into something. It's something you can and see what happens. To have it to fall on your face if it doesn't totally you imagine. Possible to just live in it goes. Possible to try it out, try it on. And and ask ourselves, is this a calling I'm going to be able to live out? Kind of try it on. Being called to do the decision you're on for a day, sometimes you try it on for 6 months or a year. Put that idea on it without yet taking it and see, action or not. Does it feel right? Does it bear fruit? Starting to see the evidence. This is going in. Spending time sharing it with other people. They're an introvert or extrovert, share and seeing how that goes. Introvert or an extrovert, sharing it in your quiet reflection. How it in you, trusting. We are not as we could be at trusting things when do something. And then we look for some affirmation, calling, some sense that this, we have to live into it, and some sense that we need to go. Clear excellence of that affirmation. To ordain ministry, in fact, affirm that call everywhere for your local church who vote. Yeah, we know this person, calling them to do this particular. All those in boards of ordained ministry who affirm that call of a calling to enter the world, it's the same way. But there are people who say, or they're, thank you. Thank you for what you've made. That's an external affirmation. The internal affirmation, trusting of our own instincts with God, and a whole other or 10 about what to feelings of affirmation or not, way or the other, right? You feel external affirmation. What is that like? And how do we, or when you're being affirmed externally, is it right internally? Cases, maybe again to that call, something needs to be refined, maybe on it, that space. So that's kind of peace. But whether internal and the external affirmation not sitting quite right in our decision, everything is going that you are exactly where we are exactly where we're. I believe of calling is to keep, because like falling over and over again, and over and over and over again, God over and over again, and we over and over and over again, over and over and over again, and some for a season of our lives, and now, and some change and to tweak the way we're doing places a whole new opportunity of us. Keep repeating. It's one of the beginning, and you do it again. It comes from outside of me, so I really do. Jesus, all authority is given to me. You can believe that. Therefore, you go and make disciples of all. What Jesus does with his authority, but what he does with his authority, and to send us, ordinary disciples, to call us. Want us to go? What? Where? We keep listening. We keep discernment. We keep information both within us and outside. We listen, individual calling, body-wide calling. Just a couple of brief examples, because it's fresh later last night than I would have done from that time. I lifted a piece of legislation from the floor, actually asking the New England, particularly who may have felt or discriminated against or discouraged, automatically accept them at a conference as clergy would discern with them. This is a broad invitation, particularly speaks and reaches out and aside because of their gender identical position. Part of the spectrum, I truly believe. An invitation to come. That motion. What I wasn't prepared for was the numbers in 24 hours that's been out there have overwhelming joy, tears, and welcomed, where it's an inference to people. Something that, saying something I didn't expect anywhere, I was surprised that it did a difference in somebody's life in many moments, and what a powerful awareness. A little individual clergy person is just something I felt individual. And then we have this going through knowing that, this was going to be a missional priority. It's this powerful moment. Yes, one person whose program got up and said, I make paper cutouts of people come out last week, saved by malaria, from Malaria Project. And so I'm making a commitment to my commitment personally. And I don't know if there were some people that they would come to the mics, but saying, I pledge on behalf of my church. A quick little conference person and the lay person here, it represents, I've just heard from our Sundays in our church are going to pledge this fundraiser. I'm going to write this. And all of a sudden, the bishop couldn't keep different microphones who live into this we have as an annual conference, No Malaria. And people came to the microphone, some $100, some $100. And we have those pledges because they were all part of how the body was being. I am sure for the folks shepherding the Imagine No Malaria eyes, that felt like something they weren't planning to do, never would do. Moment, and in that moment, now maybe others had it for a while and then live into it to do it, and they gave thanks for those, and then I keep listening. And that experience a corporate call. We, this church, you, church, have many corporates and ministries that you lead and shepherd them in the body. God calling Trinity to do something, a surprise, argue it away, or imagine living into it and bear fruit. It's called both from within. Keep listening to you individually and to Trinity. Authority, Jesus says, is given to me. I tell you to go outside your comfort zones of all the nations. Jesus has, he gives to those who minister. Surprising as it may be, may we hear and within us and around us, that may we keep listening. Us, may again and again.